You have got to see this. This is the view of a total solar eclipse as seen by the NASA Artemis 2 crew as they slingshot around the moon.
Victor Glover was looking down at a patch of the moon that was glowing faintly green, and no instrument humans have ever built has recorded that color on that surface. 250,000 miles away, the screens at Mission Control froze. The signal was dying. In 90 seconds, the moon itself would cut off every antenna on Earth, and the 4 astronauts inside Orion would be alone with whatever they were seeing.
Now, excitement is building as NASA has issued a promising update on its historic Artemis 2 moon mission.
They had a list of 35 targets to observe. By the time the radio came back, that list had become something else entirely. It had become a list of things that, according to 53 years of satellite data, are not supposed to be there. The colors that aren't on the map.
But if something were to go wrong while you're in transit to the moon or in lunar orbit, they're designed to sustain you for that full duration of return.
Christina Koch saw it first. The western rim of Mare Orientale, a 930-kilometer impact basin, one of the most photographed structures on the far side of the moon. The ejecta along the rim looked silver, not gray, not white, silver, sharper and more defined than anything in any orbital image she had ever studied. She knew low-angle sunlight enhances contrast. Every geologist knows that. But this was something else. Subtle gradations of color running along the rim that no camera in 53 years has captured. Hints of a metallic sheen where the sunlight caught the upturned debris from the original impact 4 billion years ago, when something massive slammed into the moon hard enough to send mountains of rock flying outward in the concentric waves. She logged it. She asked the rest of the crew to look. They confirmed it independently. Then she logged it again on the next pass, just to be sure she was not imagining it. She compared what she was seeing through the window to the highest resolution LRO images she had memorized in training. The window won. The window was showing her things the camera had never recorded. She was not imagining it. Victor Glover was watching the South Pole Aitken Basin. This is the largest known impact crater on the moon, 2,500 kilometers across, 8 kilometers deep in places. A scar so massive that early astronomers did not even recognize it as a crater because it was bigger than their telescopes could frame. And on the floor of that basin, Glover saw green, a faint hue, pale, almost translucent, but unmistakably green. That color does not exist on the near side of the moon. It is not in any spectral map. It is not in any Apollo photograph. The Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter has flown over that basin thousands of times and never recorded it. Glover described it twice. Then he described it a third time. Then he pulled up the reference imagery loaded into Orion's onboard system and compared what he was seeing through the window to what the maps said he should be seeing. The two did not match. He said so on the radio. He said it slowly. He said it the way a pilot says something he wants on the record. Apollo astronauts had hinted at unusual coloration in this region back in the 1970s. Faint suggestions in old Hasselblad film that nobody could ever confirm because the photography conditions were inconsistent and the astronauts were focused on other targets. The Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter later detected uneven mineral signals across the basin floor, patchy readings that nobody could fully explain. But none of that data ever pointed to the color Glover was now describing in real time. The hints were there. The confirmation never came, until a human eye finally landed on it. Jeremy Hansen guided the crew toward the von Karman Highlands, an ancient region inside the same basin. This is where China's Chang'e 4 lander touched down in 2019. The Yutu-2 rover is still there. This patch of ground is one of the most studied surfaces in the entire solar system outside of Earth itself. And as Orion passed overhead, all 4 astronauts saw the same thing. Swirls of olive and pale green spreading across the gray-white regolith. Hansen described them. Wiseman confirmed them. Koch and Glover backed both of them up. The swirls were not uniform. They moved with the terrain, following the contours of the surface, denser in some places and almost vanishing in others. Hansen described them as looking painted on, like watercolor on stone. 4 observers, 1 window, cross-verified in real time. Wiseman tried to rule out his own eyes. He looked away. He looked back. The colors were still there. He asked Koch to describe what she was seeing without telling her what he had seen. Her description matched his. He asked Glover the same thing. Same result. The four of them ran an informal control test from inside a spacecraft moving at thousands of miles per hour, and the test came back the same every time. The colors were on the surface. The colors were not on the maps. In Houston, flight controllers pulled up the spectral maps. These maps reveal what the surface is made of, based on how minerals reflect different wavelengths of light. They are the gold. Standard for analyzing the moon from a distance. Controllers compared the crew's descriptions to the data. Nothing matched. Lighting angle can change perceived color. Human eyes can pick up nuances that digital sensors miss. Four people in an unusual environment might describe what they see in inconsistent ways. Every one of those explanations was on the table, but none of them held up. The four astronauts described the colors consistently. They described them in the same regions, and they described nothing unusual in the regions where the satellite data and their direct observation already agreed. The disagreement was not random. It was geographically specific. The moon was telling them one thing. The instruments had told us something else. And then the radio cut out. The 40-minute blackout.
But actually that's part of the process, is getting it to the launch pad, running through that wet dress rehearsal, making sure everything is going according to plan.
The mass of the moon is 3,400 kilometers of solid rock. When Orion crossed behind it, that rock stood directly between the spacecraft and every receiving station on Earth. Goldstone in California went silent. Madrid in Spain went silent. Canberra in Australia went silent. The S-band antenna died. The X-band antenna died. There was no workaround. This was not engineering. This was physics. The blackout lasted 40 minutes. 40 minutes is a long time when nobody can hear you. It is long enough to read a short story. It is long enough to fly from London to Paris. It is long enough for a heart attack to kill someone twice. And for 40 minutes, four human beings were further from rescue than any human beings have ever been. Looking down at a surface nobody on Earth could see. Recording observations nobody on Earth could verify. Inside mission control, the screens froze. No telemetry, no voice loop, no instrument feedback of any kind. Every flight director in the room understood at the same moment that the entire scientific infrastructure of human civilization was now blind to what was happening behind the moon. They had built a system to know everything. The moon had just turned that system off with a wall of rock. The Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter was still up there. It kept flying its orbit. Its cameras kept rolling. Its sensors kept collecting. In theory, it was an independent witness to whatever the crew was seeing. In practice, it was not. LRO and Orion do not look at the moon the same way. LRO was built to map the surface systematically. Its primary camera reads visible and near-infrared light, tuned for the kind of direct, high-angle sunlight you get during the lunar day. It orbits at 50 kilometers. Orion was at 115. LRO's software smooths the data. It removes variations caused by lighting changes, so the final maps stay consistent across thousands of overlapping images. That is exactly what you want for a global map. It is also exactly what you do not want when something subtle is hiding in the variations themselves. The computers throw out anything that does not match what they expect to find. The moon has been showing us what we told it to show us. For 50 years, that has been good enough, because no one was up there to argue. Now there were four people up there to argue. And while they argued, the silence held. There was no signal coming back. There was no way to tell anyone in Houston what the cameras were catching, what the eyes were catching, what the instruments on board were quietly recording in the dark. Orion was a closed box for 40 minutes, and the box was full of observations that, when it finally opened, made very serious people in very expensive rooms sit down and ask the same uncomfortable question. Have we been wrong about the moon for 53 years? Apollo 13 had reached 248,655 miles in April 1970. That record stood for 56 years, but it was set during a catastrophic emergency. After an oxygen tank exploded in the service module, Lovell, Swigert, and Hayes were not looking out the window to study anything. They were trying to get home alive. The number is a record of distance, not a record of observation. Artemis 2 broke that record at 1:57 in the afternoon on April 6th. 252,756 miles from Earth. This time, no one was fighting for survival. This time, the crew was looking, and what they were looking at was not lining up with the map. What those 4 astronauts saw during those 40 minutes of silence is where this story goes from strange to unexplainable. If you want to see where it ends, hit subscribe, because what comes next, no satellite on Earth was ever built to record. 4 impacts, no instrument caught.
It's really something, isn't it, Juliet? I mean, these are things that no one's ever seen before. The Apollo missions were much closer in their orbits around the moon, so they weren't quite high enough to see what this crew is seeing.
Wiseman saw the first flash, a single point of light against the gray surface, flaring and gone in less than a second. Bright enough that he was certain, fast enough that he almost doubted himself. He called it out. Before anyone could respond, Hansen saw the second one, near the rim of a crater. Sharp, unmistakable. Glover tried to estimate the brightness. Koch logged the time and the coordinates. Onboard cameras running at high frame rates captured everything. Then the radio went dark and they were on their own. 2 more flashes followed during the blackout. 2 more impacts. 2 more strikes on the surface of the moon that no one on Earth saw, no instrument recorded, no system anywhere on the planet had any way of confirming. Only 4 pairs of human eyes and the high-speed imaging gear inside Orion captured them. 4 meteorite impacts in a single hour on the far side of the moon, witnessed by humans for the first time in history. Each one would have been a small rock, pebble-sized, maybe fist-sized, hitting at 20 kilometers per second, fast enough that the kinetic energy released on impact creates a flash bright enough to see from 115 kilometers up. Each one would have dug a fresh crater into the surface, small but new, permanent. Additions to a landscape we thought we already had mapped. When the data finally came down, the first reaction at NASA was excitement. This was extraordinary. Direct human observation of impacts on the far side had never happened before, anywhere, ever. Then someone asked the question no one wanted to ask. How many of these have we missed? The Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter monitors impacts, not with its main camera, with a comparison system that takes images of the same region weeks or months apart, and looks for new craters that were not there before. This works on the near side. It has confirmed hundreds of new craters in the last decade. Ground-based telescopes catch flashes too, on the dark portion of the moon, where the night sky lets them stand out. Amateur astronomers run dedicated programs to monitor these strikes. Professionals do, too. We have a reasonable picture of what is hitting the side of the moon we can see. But the far side is never visible from Earth. Not ever. Not from any telescope, any observatory, any instrument that has ever been built on the surface of this planet. And the LRO comparison system runs on a fixed orbital schedule. It is not real time. During the 1-hour window when these 4 impacts happened, no satellite was scheduled to image those exact regions. The flashes happened, the craters formed, and the only record of any of it lives inside the memory of 1 spacecraft and 4 people. 4 impacts in 1 hour. From a single random window, with a single set of human observers. That is the rate that happens to be visible to 4 people who happen to be looking at the right time. The actual rate, the real number of strikes hitting the far side of the moon every hour of every day for the last 60 years, is something nobody on Earth has ever measured. Because nobody on Earth has ever been able to. If the rate Orion saw is even close to the true rate, the implications are not small. It would mean the far side has been getting hit far, more often than we calculated. It would mean the data set used to model lunar impact frequency has been working from a sample size that systematically excludes the half of the moon nobody can see. It would mean every estimate of how dangerous the lunar surface is for future astronauts has been built on incomplete data. These flashes were not too small to detect. They were not too faint. They were missed because no instrument was pointing at them. And the data set we have been using to plan Artemis 3, to pick landing sites, to assess hazards, to choose where 4 more humans will set boots on the surface in a few short years. That data set was built on the assumption that the rate we measure is the rate that exists. The far side does not care what we measured. The far side has been getting hit, in the dark, with no one watching, for as long as the moon has existed. The eclipse. No one else could see.
This is continues to be unreal. The sun has gone behind the moon. and the corona is still visible, and it's bright, and it creates a halo almost around the entire moon.
At 8:35 in the evening on April 6th, the sun disappeared behind the edge of the moon as seen from Orion's window. For nearly an hour, the 4 astronauts watched a total solar eclipse that no human being on Earth was in any position to see. The geometry only worked from where they were sitting, nowhere else. Glover described the corona first. The outer atmosphere of the sun, normally drowned out by the star's glare, now visible as a ghost white halo wrapped around the black disk of the moon, streamers of plasma reaching out millions of kilometers into space. He had trained for this. He knew what it would look like. Photographers on Earth chased total eclipses for years to see this view from the ground, with the atmosphere distorting everything. Glover had it through bare glass, no air, no haze, no horizon. The cleanest view of a solar corona any human being has ever had. He did not know what was about to happen to the surface below. The lunar surface should have been completely dark. The sun was blocked. There was no source of direct light reaching the regolith. By every textbook understanding, the moon should have been a black void beneath them. It was not. The surface was glowing, faintly, softly. A blue-white haze spreading across the cratered terrain, lit by a second source of light that should not have been bright enough to see at that distance. Earthshine. Sunlight reflected off the oceans and clouds and continents of Earth, traveling 400,000 kilometers across empty space, hitting the lunar surface from the wrong direction. The phenomenon has been known for centuries. Leonardo da Vinci was the first to correctly describe it. From the ground, you can sometimes see it as the faint glow on the dark portion of a crescent moon. But from Orion's distance, at that angle, during a total eclipse with no direct sunlight to overpower it, the crew saw something nobody had described before. Wiseman noted that the surface seemed to almost glow from within, as if lit from a source somewhere beneath the dust itself. He said it more than once. So did Glover. The light did not look like reflected light. It looked like the regolith was producing it. Logically, that is impossible. The moon does not generate its own light. The dust does not glow. Every textbook on lunar science makes that clear. But 4 trained observers, looking at the same surface at the same time, all described the same illusion. Or whatever it was. The crew had no language for what they were seeing because no one had ever needed the language before. Earthshine is roughly 10,000 times weaker than direct sunlight. The instruments aboard LRO are tuned for direct solar illumination. Under Earthshine alone, the reflected signal from the moon falls near the lower edge of what those sensors can pick up in any meaningful way. And during a total eclipse, when the sun is completely blocked, Earthshine becomes the only light hitting the surface. That scenario is not in any standard satellite observation plan. It was never considered a priority. No instrument has been built to measure the moon under those conditions because no one ever expected to need to. The right satellite, in the right orbit, with the right sensitivity, has simply never existed. The crew saw color in that haze, subtle gradations of blue and white and something paler that none of them could name. Variations in the regolith that do not appear in any spectral map ever produced. Not because the regolith is rare, not because the conditions are exotic, but because no satellite was positioned to catch them at the right angle, at the right time, with the right sensitivity, all at once. The unmapped colors Koch and Glover and Hansen had described earlier were seen under low sunlight near the horizon. The blue-white haze was seen during a total eclipse under Earthshine. 2 completely different lighting conditions, 2 completely different observation sets. And the same fundamental disagreement showed up in both of them. The same gap, the same colors that should not be there, the same instruments that never recorded them. Our instruments were never designed to capture them. Why the map was wrong. After Orion came home and the crew finished their post-flight medical checks, the science teams at Johnson Space Center and Goddard started cross-referencing everything. Each color description got matched against spectral data from LRO and the Chang'e missions. Each coordinate got checked against the existing geological maps. China's Chang'e 4 sites on the surface of the von Karman Highlands. Japan's Kaguya orbited the moon for nearly 2 years before its mission ended in 2009. None of these systems had ever flown the angle Orion flew. None of them had ever observed under the conditions Orion observed. The data they collected was excellent for the questions they were built to answer. The problem was the questions. For 53 years, every question we asked the moon was asked through an instrument. Every answer the moon gave came back filtered, processed, normalized, and compared against the answer the previous instrument got. The answers got more and more consistent. We mistook consistency for accuracy. We built a beautiful, internally coherent picture of a world we had never actually looked at with our own eyes since 1972. And then 4 people looked at it, and the picture cracked. In a few cases, the analysts found faint traces in the older data, weak signals that had been written off as background noise during processing. Not because the signals did not exist, because the software had been told to ignore anything that did not match the expected model. And the expected model had been built from earlier data, processed with earlier filters, defined by even earlier models. The map was being checked against itself. Picture it like this. Someone draws a map of a coastline based on a single photograph. The next photographer goes out to the same coast and uses the first map to decide where to point the camera. The third photographer uses both. By the time you are 10 generations of photographers in, everyone is taking pictures of the same coves and ignoring the same beaches, because the map says the beaches are not there. Eventually, the map becomes the truth, and the actual coastline becomes whatever the map missed. That is what happened to the moon. The system was self-consistent. It just was not necessarily correct. On Earth, science breaks this loop with fieldwork, with samples, with independent labs running independent experiments using independent instruments. Geologists go to the mountain and pick up the rock. Biologists go to the reef and count the fish. The data gets checked against the world. On the moon, for 53 years, none of that existed. Every dataset was downstream of every other dataset. Every satellite was looking for what the previous satellite told it to look for. Every map confirmed every map. 4 people in a capsule looked out a window and broke the loop. The map of the moon that we rely on, the map built from decades of satellite data, is a map of the moon under conditions our instruments can measure. It is not a map of the moon. It is a map of the moon as our instruments can see it. The 4 impacts were not missed because they were too small. The unmapped colors are not absent because they do not exist. The Earthshine haze was not ignored because it is rare. All of it was overlooked for the same reason. The instruments were never built to catch it. The dataset that was supposed to expand our understanding of the moon turned out to be the same dataset that defined the limits of what we could understand in the first place. Artemis 2 did not show us that the moon is hiding secrets. It showed us that we have been mapping our own assumptions for half a century and calling the result a map. Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Jeremy Hansen came home with photographs. They came home with measurements. They came home with high-speed video of impact flashes no instrument on Earth recorded. And they came home with a list of questions that, until April 6, 2026, nobody on this planet had thought to ask. Why is the South Pole Aitken Basin green? Why is the Mare Orientale ejecta silver? What is in the regolith of the Von Karman Highlands that turns olive under low sunlight? How many impacts have hit the far side in the last 60 years that no one ever counted? What does the moon look like under Earthshine, in places we have not yet looked, at angles we have not yet flown? Nobody has the answers. Nobody had the questions until those 4 came home. Artemis 3 is already on the pad. 4 more astronauts. A landing site near the lunar South Pole. A surface no human has ever touched. They will be the first people in history to walk on the moon, carrying the knowledge that the map they were handed might be wrong about more than just colors. So, here is the question. If our instruments only show us what we built them to look, for what else is the moon hiding in plain sight? Drop your theory in the comments. Subscribe so you are here when Artemis 3 lands at the South Pole, because whatever is waiting for them down there might finally tell us what those 4 astronauts really saw on April 6th, 2026. The list of questions is still open. The next mission is not going to wait.